My name is Kevin Petrus, and I'd like to welcome everyone to the Law Enforcement Center, home of the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department here in Charlotte, North Carolina. Thank you all of you, for being here. It really does mean a lot. I'm sure we have some faithful followers, longtime followers of CMPD that are tuning in today. We appreciate your long-standing support, and I'm sure we also hopefully have some new followers. Somebody new that's tuning in. We appreciate you for being here too, and we hope that you'll continue to join us. CMPD today is joined by our partners at the North Carolina State Bureau of Investigation and from the Federal Bureau of Investigation to make you aware of an increased danger that our children face through modern technology. All of what you are about to hear today can be stated very simply. The internet, cell phones, social media, all provide a wide open gateway to increased danger for our children and our young people. We want you as parents, as adults, and children to be armed with the knowledge and information that is available so that you can make the best decisions for your family. We have 3 speakers joining us today to expound on the issues that we're seeing locally, statewide throughout North Carolina, and nationwide. Please hold any questions until the end after all of the speakers have concluded their remarks, and we will take those questions at the end. The first speaker today is Lieutenant Jim Ivey with CMPD. Lieutenant Ivey is assigned to the CMPD Special Victims Division and will speak about CMPD's role in handling these investigations and what we're seeing locally. Lieutenant Ivey.
Thank you all for coming. We're here today to talk about a really disturbing trend, that of the rapid and large increase in the amount of crime being committed against our children online, and that being child sex abuse material, better known as child pornography, child exploitation, and extortion. We're joined today by our partners with the North Carolina SBI and the FBI to talk about the large amount of work that law enforcement is doing to combat this problem. But we cannot do it alone. We also want to speak to the community and to parents about what you can do to help us keep children from being victimized in the first place. We're going to be very frank and honest with you today. I stand here not only as a law enforcement officer, but also as a father. I can tell you this is a subject that none of us want to talk about, but it is very real, and it is here in our community. Online predators, child pornography suspects are not always shadowy figures overseas. They're people that live in our community. They're people that live across this state and in communities across this nation. Right now, as we stand here, there are predators online trying to access your children. They are trying to use a computer, a cell phone, a social media account to entice your children to send explicit images, to in essence commit a sexual assault via online technology. We need parents' help to keep children from being victimized. To give a sense of the explosion of the numbers, you can see the cyber tips that CMPD has received. SAC Roughton is going to get into some more details about what a cyber tip is, but in essence, it is a report that's generated by the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, where a social media content provider or an internet content provider such as Google or Instagram, their servers have detected a child pornography being shared online, and that report is forwarded to a local jurisdiction where the images are being shared from for investigation. So in 2016, CMPD received 98 cyber tips. By 2019, that number was 414, and last year, in 2022, it was 724, a massive increase in just a few years. So far this year, we're over 300 and on pace to hit that 700 number again this year. And these are just our cyber tip numbers. This does not include referrals from other law enforcement agencies, 911 calls, or proactive undercover online investigations that our detectives are conducting. And despite all of the work, our detectives and the special agents involved are doing tremendous work targeting the worst offenders. As an example, a case sentencing that happened in March of this year. A gentleman by the name of Sean Burney was sentenced to 17.5 years in federal prison on a case that was investigated jointly by the CMPD Cybercrimes Unit and the FBI. This individual posed as a juvenile female online and enticed a 14-year-old boy to send him explicit images. Once he received those images, he told this young man that if he did not send him more images, he would post the ones he already had online for the world to see. Now, ASAC Bogus is going to talk a little bit more about those types of crimes, but I bring that investigation to light to point out that this was a suspect who lived in Charlotte, who was preying on children in Charlotte, all through the use of a computer and online devices. These are complex investigations. They take months or even years to complete. For example, the Burney investigation was 6 months from the initial report until the time of his arrest. The other problem with cyber tips is they are reactive investigations. Once CMPD has received a cyber tip, a child has already been victimized. So what we want to talk about today is how parents can help us to keep children from being victimized. Once law enforcement is involved, at least one child has already been victimized. Mr. Burney was stopped by a parent who made a report protecting their children. So I think of parent involvement as a three-pronged approach. There's a technological side where you set parental controls or use monitoring software on each of your children's devices. There's frank and difficult conversations you have with your children about what is appropriate to do and share online. And finally, there is searches that you need to do of your children's devices. Any device that they use to chat with people in the outside, their cell phones, their computers, their tablets, even their gaming devices. You need to tell your children to never, ever send any explicit image online, no matter who they think they're sending it to. As you can see from the Burney investigation, criminals pose as people that they are not very easily online. And once that image is gone, we have lost control. There is nothing that our detectives can do to 100% scrub the web of an image that's been sent to someone else. Tell your children to never chat online with someone unless they know them in person. Obviously, again, with the investigation I pointed out, people can pretend to be somebody they're not. Limit and monitor the amount of time your children spend on screens. Know their passwords and know what they're talking about when you're looking at the information on their devices. If you see an acronym or an abbreviation that you don't know, look it up. Ask your child. Find out what they're talking about. These crimes know no geographical, socioeconomic, or racial boundaries. They are in every corner of our city. If you take the cyber tips that we've received and map them, it covers the city of Charlotte. Our goal today is to bring this problem to light for parents, to let you know how you can help us, because once again, we need to stop the victimization of our children, protect our children. There's lots of ways to report locally. If you feel that you have found abuse, you can obviously always call 911 or 311 to make a report. There's also the cyber tip line, which is excellent. That is at cybertipline.org or 1-800-THE-LOST. That's run by the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. And just keep in mind that the investigation will ultimately be routed to the location where the suspect is sharing or requesting images, not necessarily where the victim lives. There's also resources out there for children and families that have already been victimized. The Cyber Tip Line website has a lot of those resources. And if you feel that you have images, that there are images out there that are already being shared, you can go to takeitdown.ncmec.org, and they will help you to try and scrub the web of any images. So please help us out. Help protect our kids.
Thank you, Lieutenant Ivey. Our next speaker is Special Agent in Charge Kevin Roughton with the North Carolina State Bureau of Investigation. He's going to talk more about cyber tips and prevention tips for parents. Sir.
Can you spell your last name?
Sure.
Kevin, K-E-V-I-N, Roughton, R-O-U-G-H-T-O-N. Thank you to CMPD for inviting us to take part in this today. This is critical information that needs to be in the hands of every parent. So this is extremely important. We greatly value our partnership with CMPD, with the FBI, as well as other ICAC affiliates. ICAC is Internet Crimes Against Children, and we have approximately 240 affiliate agencies across the state of North Carolina that we work closely with. Those are mostly police departments and sheriff's departments that we partner with in investigating Internet crimes against children. The North Carolina State Bureau of Investigation is the lead agency in that role. So we partner directly with the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, and we receive the reports that they get in their cyber tip line, as was mentioned earlier. The cyber tip line is a hotline or a website that can be reported from anyone, anywhere. When they find something online that's disturbing or seems to be a danger to a child, they can make that report to the cyber tip line, and then they can review the information to try to determine where they believe that individual is or where that crime may have been committed. There is also a federal law that mandates social networks and electronic service providers to report content they find on their networks to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. And in fact, about 99% of all cyber tips are generated this way, from electronic service providers that find content on their networks and report that to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. At the cyber tip line, once they determine where they believe it is geographically, if they think it's in North Carolina, all of those come to the SBI, to our computer crimes unit. And we have to make a few determinations because there's 50 different states and 50 different sets of laws. We have to determine if a crime has occurred in North Carolina, and then if it has, what information has been provided to us that we can use to locate where this crime may have occurred or who may be responsible for it. So that's a variety of information. It could be email addresses or usernames or telephone numbers or other things that we will use to attempt to locate where this crime occurred from a jurisdictional perspective. Once we do that, again, we work with our local partners, such as CMPD, and we provide that information to them, as well as we partner with them in investigations. We may provide assistance on search warrants or technical expertise or specialized tools to work these investigations jointly. You'll see from talking about cyber tips and looking historically from approximately 2010 through today, for the most part in those years, there was a slight increase in cyber tips year over year, which is to be expected as social media networks grew, as technology advanced, as we had more devices in the hands of more people. You would expect that year over year slight increase. But what you'll notice if we look just between 2019 and today, you will find that there has been a drastic increase in cyber tips in these last few years, to the point that in March and April of 2020, we saw those almost instantaneously double, which stands to reason. We took kids out of school for the most part, and we put them in virtual classrooms and online learning. We took a lot of our workforce and we put it remote. So literally we had more people online at the same time than ever before in the history of the world. So we would expect tips to go up in that scenario. However, we've all seen the COVID graph, and there was a spike in that, and then things have come back down. And for the most part in society, we are back to a normalcy where kids are, for the most part, back in school, and much of the workforce is back in offices. However, we have not seen a decline at all in cyber tips. In fact, we've seen it continue to increase. In fact, most recently, last month, our tips were the second highest month that we've ever had. So there is a continuing danger and an increasing danger, and we need far more than ever to be proactive in this approach as our community, not just as law enforcement. Law enforcement, again, with cyber tips, as was mentioned earlier, we are reacting to these, but our community and parents, those that are involved with kids, need to be proactive in our approach to this. In a past generation, when we were trying to protect our kids, we had this thing that we referred to as stranger danger. We were concerned about the creepy guy in the park that might want to get to our kid. And so we would tell them to avoid strangers, but it was really easy when we saw the guy in the park, so to speak, to identify that person, know who they were, and keep our kids away from them, or step in and intervene if we needed to prevent that communication from occurring. That's not the case now. With social media, it is really easy for people to come in and communicate with our kids and us not know who they are if we aren't paying attention and we haven't taught them how to protect themselves. So in that scenario, this guy who was easily identified in person in the park as the creepy individual, is now anybody he wants to be with any name he wants to have at any age he wants to be and can talk about anything he wants to, and there's no way to verify that. So we have to educate our kids. We cannot arrest our way out of this problem. We have to educate our parents, educate our children out of this problem. One of the ways I strongly encourage parents to be involved in this is to engage with your kids. Ask questions about what social media that they're using. Ask questions about what apps they're using. Parents many times are intimidated by the technology because their kids seem to know more about it than they do, and I understand that. However, I would tell you that you as a parent or guardian have significant life experience that your children do not have. And so use them as the experts in technology that they are. Ask them questions. How does this work? What does that mean? And when you engage with them, they will say things in talking about how they use that particular app or that particular network that will cause you, with your life experience, to have red flags. That's your wisdom that you can use to speak into their situation. So this partnership between parents and children of their technical expertise with your years of wisdom and experience really is what makes the best prevention strategy. This is a growing crime, as I said, and as you've seen from the graphs. However, let me just point out that this is not, when I say the word cyber tip, most people think of a deep, dark place on the internet where the creepy person, the creepy pedophile might be. This past year, of the tips we received from the National Center, nearly 56% of those were from Facebook, Instagram, Google, and Snapchat. I say that because that's not where many of us in society would expect to be the most dangerous places. And it's not that these social networks are inherently dangerous, it's in how they're being used. And because of the publicity and popularity of these networks and many parents having their own accounts in these areas, that they feel very comfortable with them or comfortable allowing their children to have access to them. However, I would say that probably the way that you are interacting on that social network may not be the same way that your child is interacting on that network. So again, this partnership between parents and their children in your wisdom and years of expertise really is the best strategy in helping educate your child to protect themselves online. Again, thank you for allowing me to be here today and for the partnerships that we have in this.
Thank you, sir. Our final speaker for this morning is Assistant Special Agent in Charge Beth Boggess. That's Boggess. She's with the Federal Bureau of Investigation and is going to be speaking about a common internet extortion scheme that is targeting our young people. Yeah.
Good morning, everyone. Again, thank you to our CMPD partners for having us here today. I lead our criminal investigations throughout the state of North Carolina for federal crimes. Today I want to spotlight a new scheme over the last couple of years that we've seen on the federal side of our investigations. Like Lieutenant Ivey talked about, where a child predator poses online as a female or a male as a child. Very differently in this case, instead of asking for photographs in return, in our case, what they do is they request financial or money to be sent in exchange for their privacy and keeping that photograph from being sent to their family and friends. So what we call it is financial sextortion or financial-based or sextortion. Again, they pose online as children. They trick the child into sending the photographs, sexually explicit photographs. They hold it, they ask for money, and the child feels this need to send money. What we need to know is that children can talk to their parents, talk to caregivers, talk to law enforcement about this as a way to prevent it. Between 2021 and 2022, the FBI in North Carolina saw a 600% increase in financially motivated sextortion cases. In this year alone, we've identified 123 victims that have been reported to us. Most of those victims in these cases happen to be teenage boys. Typically, the child predator will pose as a teenage female and trick the child into sending the sexually explicit photograph. Many times these criminals are operating overseas. That can make it harder to identify and prosecute these subjects, but not impossible. The FBI recently has been working hand in hand with our international law enforcement partners in other countries to identify and help prosecute these predators that are residing in other countries. We had a recent case in Detroit where 3 subjects overseas were charged with sextortion of a minor boy who ended up taking his own life. So what we're talking about here is not just kids being victimized financially and losing money. We're talking about kids that may be self-harming themselves and the trauma causing them to take their own life. So very important crime here. Children are not to blame for this. What you need to know is that these predators online committing these financial scams are professionals. This is their day job. They are constantly targeting children day in and day out, trying to make money. This is the way they make money. For victimization to stop, as I said before, children need to be comfortable in reporting this to their parents. And the first line of defense is our parents. We have many dedicated law enforcement officials across the country trying to find and prosecute those who are victimizing our children. But every time, like Lieutenant Ivy said, every time we start an investigation, a child has already been victimized. So we're already behind in trying to prevent the victimization of children. The FBI, we're often asked, and something I'm often asked is, where are these predators? And I can say without a doubt that these predators are everywhere your children are online. The SBI, our partners with CMPD, they identified some of the apps of where they are. The parents are the first line of defense for us. They have to be involved. And when you're talking about sharing passwords and usernames with apps, this is not a privacy issue with your child. This is a safety issue. Talk to your children. Be involved. Understand the devices that they're working on. Understand the applications that they're using every day. Just make sure you're communicating with your children. I come to you too as a parent with my 10-year-old children at home. I'm often involved in what they're doing. There's also third-party apps out there that can help you track what they're doing online. Build that trust with your children. Communicate with them often. And I just wanted to say thank you guys. And if you have any more questions about the financial sextortion, just let me know. So thank you.
Thank you so much. As we prepare to take some of your questions, I just want to emphasize our partners, CMPD, the SBI, the FBI, we all stand together. We stand resolved to continue to investigate these heinous violations whenever they occur, wherever they occur, and to take justice, bring justice to the predators that are perpetrating them. But again, children have already been victimized by the time we generally get our hands on these investigations. And so what we want to do today is bring awareness to parents, to adults, so that you will be vigilant, so that you will be on guard for the sake of your children. So we'll take questions now. As we prepare to do so, I ask that our speakers just come and stand near the podium. If you have a question, feel free to shout it out. Just ask that you say your name and just identify who your question's for, please. And we're just going to keep it on the topic that we discussed today.
Jay Leo, Q City Metro. In regards to the victims, what age does this typically start at?
So the question is, what age are we typically targeting here?
Typically, they're going to be teenagers, but really at any point when a child is allowed online to go into a social media site or to start chatting with people on the outside, they could be victimized. We have seen very, very young victims from these crimes. So it really knows no age bound. As soon as somebody's on a device, they could be victimized.
And so I know oftentimes kids go to social media, to make friends. We're in the wave of virtual learning. What is your advice to these kids who are going to social media to meet strangers to make friends?
Don't meet strangers online. Just like you wouldn't meet a stranger in person, don't meet them online. If you have a friend of yours that you trust and you know that they know somebody, okay. But I tell my kids, do not chat with anybody online unless you know them in person. I will go down their contact list and say, who is that, who is that, who is that, who is that? And they better be able to tell me where they know them in person. Yes.
Teen quiz on the TQ group. How much of a concern, you have a lot of people playing games online, children playing games online, and there are conversations throughout these games. Also, you've got apps that can change your voice or make it sound like something different. So how do you help to make sure that the people they're chatting with through these games actually, because a lot of times they're playing through Nintendo or whatever, Xbox, but it could eventually lead to, they're building that communication that they don't know who it is, but they're starting a relationship through these games. So how do you sort of weed through that? And
Well, once again, if you met somebody through a game, you don't know them in person. Now, if you want to chat with somebody about the gameplay, I can understand that online. But if the conversation goes beyond that, it's not appropriate. Bottom line. Yes, these gaming, as we saw from the graph, and as ASAC August said, these predators are wherever your children are. So gaming devices certainly are part of the way in. And so it's the same thing, that if you don't know that person, you want to chat with them about a gameplay, okay. But if you do not know them, you are not going to develop any relationship beyond that game. Not in my house, and I don't think in anybody else's house you have the same thing.
Any other questions? Again, we sincerely thank you all for being here. We have a media release that is going out, or maybe already has gone out, so keep an eye out for that. It'll have the information that we shared today, the graphs that we have shared today, and the data. Thank you for being here, to our media, and to those watching. God bless.